Marcus Chen stood in the dimly lit warehouse, squinting at what the vendor assured him was premium imported meat.
Starting.
The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows across rows of refrigerated containers that hummed buzz. He pulled his jacket tighter against the cold air that seemed to carry hints of ozone.
You
and
sure
something else
this
he
is
couldn't
beef?
quite identify. You sure this is beef? Marcus asked, peering through the frosted glass at what looked like two large, oddly shaped packages wrapped in some kind of metallic material that seemed to shimmer even in the poor lighting. The vendor, a nervous man with darting eyes and hands that never stopped fidgeting, wiped sweat from his forehead despite the cold. Premium grade, my friend. Very exclusive, very rare. You won't find this quality anywhere else in the city. Marcus frowned. He'd been coming to this underground market for months, ever since his promotion at the engineering firm had finally given him the income to shop for something better than supermarket ground chuck. His wife Sarah had been dropping hints about their dinner party tonight for weeks. Her boss was coming over, along with two major potential clients from the aerospace company where she worked as a project manager. This dinner could make or break her chances for the promotion she'd been chasing for 3 years. The packages in the freezer didn't look like any cut of meat he'd ever seen. They were roughly human-sized, but the proportions seemed wrong somehow. The metallic wrapping reflected the light in patterns that hurt his eyes if he stared too long. But the vendor had assured him this was the finest protein money could buy, imported from a very exclusive source. How much for both? Marcus asked, checking his watch. He had exactly 2 hours before the guests arrived, and he still needed to prep everything. For you, special price, $5,000 for the pair. The vendor's smile looked more like a grimace. Marcus nearly choked. $5,000. For meat? Premium grade, the vendor repeated, his voice taking on a desperate edge. Very rare. Very special. You understand? Cannot get this anywhere else. Once-in-lifetime opportunity. Something about the man's desperation made Marcus pause. He built his career in engineering by trusting his instincts about when things didn't add up, and everything about this situation was setting off alarm bells. But then he thought about Sarah's face when she talked about this dinner party, about how much it meant to her, about how he'd promised her something special. Look, Marcus said slowly, I've got $300 cash. That's it. Take it or leave it. The vendor's eyes went wide, and for a moment Marcus thought he might actually refuse. Then the man glanced around the warehouse nervously, as if checking to make sure they weren't being watched. 300, the vendor whispered. Yes. Good. You take now, yes? No. Questions. No returns. You never tell anyone where you get this. The transaction happened so fast, Marcus barely had time to process it. The vendor practically shoved the packages into the back of Marcus's SUV, muttering under his breath in what sounded like several different languages, none of which Marcus recognized. The man's hand shook as he counted the cash, and he kept glancing at the sky as if expecting something to drop out of it. Remember, the vendor said as Marcus closed the tailgate, you never see me. You never hear of this place. You cook tonight, you eat, you forget. Understand? Marcus nodded, though he understood nothing. The vendor was already backing away, clutching the money like his life depended on it. Within minutes, Marcus found himself alone in the parking lot, staring at two mysterious packages that had cost him $300 and might contain the worst purchase decision of his life. The drive home gave him 20 minutes to second-guess everything. The packages sat in the back, wrapped in that strange metallic material that seemed to generate its own soft light. Every time he glanced in the rearview mirror, he could swear he saw movement in the reflection. But when he looked directly back, everything was still. Sarah was in the kitchen when he arrived, surrounded by the controlled chaos of dinner preparation. Pots bubbled on the stove, the good china was laid out on the counter, and the scent of her famous garlic bread filled the air. She looked up when he came in carrying the first package, her dark hair pulled back in the messy bun that meant she was in full cooking mode. Please tell me that's not another one of your experimental ingredients, she said, eyeing the metallic wrapping. Remember what happened when you tried to make that molecular gastronomy thing? It's supposed to be premium meat, Marcus said, struggling with the awkward weight and shape of the package. The guy said it was imported. Very exclusive. Sarah raised an eyebrow as he brought in the second package. Marcus, these look like body bags. They're just wrapped weird, he said. Though privately he had to admit she had a point. Help me get them into the kitchen? They managed to wrestle both packages onto the large island in the center of their kitchen. Under the bright LED lights, the metallic wrapping looked even stranger. It wasn't foil or plastic, but something that seemed to shift between silver and gold depending on the angle. The surface was covered in what might have been writing, but in a script unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. "What language is this?" Sarah asked, running her finger along one of the symbols. The moment she touched it, the symbol flashed briefly blue. "Probably just manufacturer labels," Marcus said, though his engineering mind was cataloguing a dozen things that were wrong with that explanation. "Let's just unwrap them and see what we've got." Finding the seam in the wrapping took several minutes. It wasn't heat-sealed or taped, but seemed to be held together by some kind of molecular bond that finally gave way when Marcus applied pressure to a specific sequence of the symbols. The material peeled back with a soft hissing sound, releasing a cloud of cold mist that smelled like copper and electricity. What they found underneath made them both step back in shock. It wasn't meat. Not in any sense that either of them understood the word. The first package contained what was unmistakably a humanoid figure, but unlike anything from Earth. The being was tall and slender, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Her features were delicate, almost ethereal, with large eyes that remained closed, and hair that looked like spun silver. She was breathing, Marcus realized with a start. Very slowly, but definitely breathing. "Marcus," Sarah whispered, "what did you buy?" Before he could answer, they opened the second package. This being was similar to the first, but with subtle differences. Her skin had a slight green tint, and her hair was darker, more like platinum than silver. She too was breathing, and as they watched, her eyes began to flutter. "Oh God," Marcus said, backing away from the counter. "Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. I think I just bought 2 people." The second being's eyes opened fully, revealing irises that shifted color like oil on water. She looked around the kitchen with obvious confusion before her gaze settled on Marcus and Sarah. When she spoke, her voice was melodic, but the words were in a language neither of them had ever heard. The first being stirred as well, her silver eyes focusing on her companion before turning to study their surroundings. She said something in response, and the two began what was clearly a conversation, though the language remained incomprehensible. Are they talking to each other?" Sarah asked. "I think so," Marcus said. He was running through every rational explanation he could think of, and coming up empty. "Maybe they're, I don't know, special effects? Like really advanced robots?" One of the beings, the one with green-tinged skin, turned to look directly at him when he spoke. She tilted her head, studying him with obvious intelligence, then spoke again. This time, something in her tone made it clear she was addressing him directly. "I don't understand," Marcus said, feeling foolish for talking to what might be advanced puppets but unable to shake the conviction that these were living, thinking beings. The silver-haired one sat up on the counter with fluid grace, then pointed to herself and said something that sounded like Zara. She pointed to her companion and said something that might have been Kira.
"Names," Sarah breathed.
"They're giving us their names." Zara pointed to Marcus, her eyebrows raised in an unmistakably questioning expression. "Marcus?" he said, pointing to himself. "Marcus. Marcus," Zara repeated, her accent turning the familiar name into something musical. Kira pointed to Sarah. "Sarah," Sarah said. Sarah both being said together, then exchanged what looked like amused glances. The doorbell rang. Marcus and Sarah froze, staring at each other in horror. The dinner guests. Sarah's boss and the 2 aerospace executives. The most important dinner party of Sarah's career. "What do we do?" Sarah whispered. Beings had gone still at the sound of the doorbell, their expression shifting to something that might have been alarm. Kira said something urgent to Zara, who responded with what sounded like agreement. "We hide them," Marcus said. "Upstairs. We'll figure this out after dinner." "Hide them?" "Marcus, they're not lost pets. They're... whatever they are, they're people." The doorbell rang again, followed by the sound of voices outside. Sarah's boss had arrived early, as was his habit. Zara slipped off the counter and stood, revealing that she was taller than Marcus had initially thought, nearly 6 feet. Her movements had an otherworldly grace, as if gravity affected her differently. She spoke to Kira, who nodded and stood as well. Both beings looked at Marcus and Sarah, then toward the front of the house where the voices were getting louder. Zara said something that, despite the language barrier, clearly conveyed the message. "We understand. We'll hide." "Upstairs," Marcus said, pointing toward the staircase. Guest room, please. The beings nodded and moved toward the stairs with silent steps. Marcus was struck by how they seemed to float rather than walk, barely making any sound despite their height and apparent solidity. "Sarah," her boss's voice called from outside. "Don't keep us standing in the cold." "Coming," Sarah called back, then turned to Marcus. "What about dinner? What are we going to serve them?" Marcus looked at the empty metallic wrapping on the counter, then at the stairs where two alien beings had just disappeared into their guest room. "I'll figure something out," he said. "Pizza?" "Pizza," Sarah agreed. "We're serving my boss and two major aerospace executives pizza." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. The biggest opportunity of Sarah's career, and they were serving pizza while hiding what might be the most important discovery in human history in their spare bedroom. Marcus quickly stuffed the metallic wrapping into a garbage bag and shoved it under the sink. Sarah smoothed her hair, straightened her dress, and went to answer the door. Marcus could hear her greeting their guests with her professional voice, the one that suggested everything was perfectly normal and under control. Upstairs, something fell over with a soft thump. Marcus closed his eyes and wondered if it was too late to pretend this was all an elaborate nightmare. When he opened them again, the kitchen still smelled like copper and electricity, and he could hear Sarah explaining to her boss that there had been a slight change in the dinner menu. It was going to be a very long night. The pizza arrived 45 minutes later, which Marcus considered a minor miracle, given that he'd ordered it while hiding in the kitchen pantry and whispering into his phone like he was planning some kind of covert operation, which, he supposed, he was. "Everything all right in there, Marcus?" called Dr. Pege. Patricia Hendricks, Sarah's boss and the head of the aerospace division. Her voice carried the authoritative tone of someone accustomed to managing complex projects and difficult people. "Just checking on the guy dish called back," emerging from the pantry with what he hoped was a convincing smile. The dinner guests were arranged around their dining room table, making polite conversation while Sarah performed masterful damage control. James Morton and Elena Rodriguez, the two executives from Stellar Dynamics Corporation, seemed more amused than offended by the impromptu menu change. Morton, a bear of a man with graying hair and laugh lines around his eyes, was regaling the table with stories about military rations he'd eaten during his Air Force days. "Trust me," Morton was saying. "After 6 months deployed eating freeze-dried everything, pizza sounds like fine dining." Rodriguez nodded agreement while swirling her wine glass. She was younger than Morton, with sharp features and observant eyes that Marcus noticed kept tracking toward the ceiling whenever there was a sound from upstairs. "Some of my best engineering breakthroughs have happened over pizza at 3 in the morning," she said. "There's something about informal settings that frees up creative thinking." Marcus set down plates and tried to ignore the fact that every small sound from the second floor made him flinch. So far, Zara and Kira had been relatively quiet, but he could occasionally hear what sounded like muffled conversation in their musical language. "So, Marcus." "Doctor," Hendricks said as they began eating. "Sarah tells me you're in structural engineering. Working on anything interesting?" "Bridge design, mostly," Marcus said, forcing himself to focus on the conversation. "Nothing as exciting as what you folks do." "Oh, I don't know about that," Rodriguez said. "The principles of structural integrity apply whether you're spanning a river or building a space station. It's all about understanding forces and materials under stress." An odd thumping sound came from upstairs, followed by what might have been giggling. Marcus coughed to cover it. "Exactly, forces and materials. Is someone else here tonight?" Morton asked, glancing toward the ceiling. "I thought I heard voices earlier." Sarah jumped in smoothly. "Just the neighbors next door. The walls aren't as thick as we'd like." Marcus silently blessed his wife's quick thinking while wondering what exactly was happening in their guest room. Was Zara and Kira exploring? Were they trying to communicate with someone? The thought that they might be signaling other members of their species made his stomach clench. "Actually, Doctor," Hendricks said, cutting into her pizza with surgical precision, "there's been some interesting chatter in the defense contractor community lately. Rumors about unusual materials showing up in the supply chain. Things that don't match any known manufacturing processes." Rodriguez nodded. "I've heard the same thing. Materials with properties that don't fit our understanding of conventional physics. Of course, most of it's probably just industrial espionage rumors or advanced composites from classified programs. Still," Morton said, "makes you wonder what's really out there. The universe is a big place. Statistically speaking, we can't be the only ones who figured out metallurgy and engineering." Marcus nearly choked on his pizza. These people were casually discussing the possibility of alien technology, while two actual aliens were currently rummaging around in his guest bedroom. The irony was so thick he could taste it. A louder thump from upstairs made everyone pause. This time it was followed by what sounded distinctly like something electronic powering up, then down again. "That's quite an active neighbor," Morton observed. "They're renovating," Sarah said quickly. "Always doing construction work at odd hours." Marcus excused himself and slipped upstairs, his heart pounding. He could hear voices from behind the guest room door, Zara and Kira talking in their own language, but with an urgency that hadn't been there before. He knocked softly. The voices stopped immediately. "It's Marcus," he whispered. After a moment, the door opened a crack, and Kira's green-tinted face appeared. She looked worried, her oil-slick eyes wide with what might have been fear. She gestured for him to come in. The guest room had been transformed. Somehow, in the span of an hour, the two beings had turned his mother-in-law's old sewing room into something that looked like a cross between a laboratory and a communication center. The antique dresser now hosted what appeared to be a complex device constructed from. Marcus blinked hard, trying to process what he was seeing. They'd somehow disassembled Sarah's old laptop, his electric shaver, the bedside alarm clock, and what looked like half the contents of their junk drawer, then reassembled everything into a configuration that shouldn't have been physically possible. Wires and circuits were arranged in patterns that hurt to look at directly, and the whole assembly was humming with soft energy that made the air taste like storms. "Holy," Marcus breathed. Zara looked up from where she was making delicate adjustments to what used to be his wireless router. She said something to Kira, who nodded and turned to Marcus. "Marcus," Kira said carefully. Then she touched her chest and said, "Kira Valthara Empire." She pointed to Zara. Valthara Empire." She gestured to the device they'd built, then mimicked holding something to her ear. The meaning was clear. They were trying to communicate with their people. "Phone home," Marcus said, the movie reference slipping out automatically. Both beings tilted their heads, clearly not understanding the cultural reference. Kira tried again, speaking slowly and using gestures. She pointed at herself and Zara, then made a motion that suggested they'd been transported or moved. Then she pointed downward, toward Earth, Marcus realized, and made an expression that clearly indicated this had not been voluntary. "You were kidnapped," Marcus said, pieces falling into place. "That vendor, he wasn't selling meat. He was trafficking people, alien people." Zara's expression darkened, and she said something sharp in their language. Kira nodded grimly and continued her explanation. She pointed to Marcus, then to the money gesture, then to the device. The message was becoming clearer. They understood he'd bought them, but they also understood he hadn't known what he was buying. Now they needed his help to contact their people. The device suddenly came to life, projecting a soft holographic display that made Marcus take an involuntary step backward. Symbols and what looked like star charts appeared in the air above the machine, rotating slowly. Zara made rapid adjustments, and the display zoomed in on what was unmistakably their solar system. "Oh, we are so screwed," Marcus muttered. Kira looked at him questioningly. "Nothing," Marcus said. "Continue." The display shifted, showing Earth from space, then zooming in further to show what Marcus recognized as their continent, then their region. Red markers appeared at various points across the map, pulsing gently. "Are those?" Marcus started. Zara nodded and said something that sounded worried. She pointed to the markers, then to herself and Kira, then made a gesture that suggested many. "There are others," Marcus realized. "Other people like you, scattered around the planet." The implications hit him like a freight train. This wasn't just about two aliens in his guest room. This was about what appeared to be a large-scale trafficking operation targeting beings from another world. And somehow, by trying to buy what he thought was exotic meat for a dinner party, he'd stumbled into the middle of it. A new sound made them all freeze, the distinctive chime of Marcus's phone receiving a text message. But the sound had come from the device Zara and Kira had built, not from his pocket. Zara touched something on the display, and Marcus's phone appeared as a hologram in the air above them. The text message was visible, but the sender was listed as unknown, and the message itself was in the same flowing script they'd seen on the metallic wrapping. "They're using your communication networks," Marcus said. "You hacked into our cell phone system." Kira nodded proudly. Then her expression became serious again. She pointed to the message, then to herself and Zara, then made a cutting gesture across her throat. The message was a threat. "Someone knows you're here," Marcus said. "And they're not happy about it. Footsteps on the stairs made them all turn toward the door. Sarah's voice called softly, "Marcus? Dr. Hendricks wants to know if you have any antacids. Morton thinks the pepperoni was too spicy." "Coming," Marcus called back. He looked at Zara and Kira, who were already moving to hide their device behind the bed. "Stay quiet. I'll figure something out." But as he headed downstairs, Marcus realized he had no idea what he was going to figure out. Aliens were apparently being trafficked to Earth. His dinner guests included people who might be able to help or might report everything to the government, and somewhere out there, someone was angry enough about Zara and Kira's location to send death threats through hijacked cell phone networks.
The dinner party continued below with polite conversation about aerospace technology and market trends.
Meanwhile, upstairs, two members of an alien species were using his household electronics to map what appeared to be an interplanetary crime syndicate. Marcus had a feeling the antacids weren't going to help with the kind of stomach problems he was about to develop. "Everything all right?" Dr. Hendricks asked when he returned with the antacids. "You look a bit pale." "Just tired," Marcus said. "It's been a long day." "Well," Rodriguez said, checking her watch, "we should probably start wrapping up soon anyway." "Early meetings tomorrow." As if on cue, another message chime sounded from upstairs. This time, it was definitely louder than before. "That neighbor is really going at it tonight," Morton observed. "Maybe we should call the police." "Doctor," Hendricks suggested. "If they're disturbing the peace." "No," Marcus said quickly, then caught himself. "I mean, it's really not that bad. They'll probably quiet down soon." But even as he said it, Marcus could hear more sounds from upstairs. The soft electronic humming was getting louder, and now there were what sounded like multiple message chimes coming in rapid succession. Sarah caught his eye across the table, and he could see she was thinking the same thing he was. Whatever was happening upstairs was escalating, and they were running out of time to handle it quietly. Rodriguez's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it with a frown. "That's odd," she said. "I'm getting some kind of interference pattern. The GPS is showing my location as somewhere in orbit." Morton checked his phone and raised an eyebrow. "Mine too. And I'm apparently moving at 17,000 miles per hour. "Doctor." Hendricks looked at her device and shook her head. "Network error, probably. All our phones are showing the same impossible readings." Marcus felt his blood pressure spike. Zara and Kira weren't just hacking his phone. They were affecting every electronic device in the area. And judging by the increasingly urgent sounds from upstairs, whatever they were doing was attracting attention. The kind of attention that sent threatening messages through hijacked communication networks. The kind of attention that might already be on its way to his house. The first sign that their evening was about to get significantly more complicated came when all the streetlights on their block went out simultaneously. The second sign was when they came back on. But now they were pulsing in a rhythm that definitely wasn't standard municipal lighting protocol. "That's not normal," Morton said, peering out the dining room window. Rodriguez had her phone out again, frowning at the display. "I'm reading electromagnetic signatures that shouldn't be possible with civilian electronics. It's like there's a powerful transmitter operating nearby." Marcus felt his heart rate spike as he recognized the rhythm of the pulsing lights. It matched the pattern of sounds they'd been hearing from upstairs. Zara and Kira weren't just communicating, they were broadcasting. And if the streetlights were responding to their signal, there was no telling what else might be picking it up. "Maybe we should," Dr. Hendricks began, but she was interrupted by a sound that made everyone at the table go silent. It started as a low humming, barely perceptible, but it grew steadily louder and more complex. It wasn't coming from upstairs anymore. It was coming from outside, from the sky, and it carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in their bones. "Is that a helicopter?" Sarah asked, though the sound was unlike any aircraft any of them had heard before. Morton, with his military background, was already moving toward the window. "No rotors," he said. "No engine signature I recognize. But whatever it is, it's big." The humming intensified, and suddenly every electronic device in the house began chiming, buzzing, and displaying error messages. The microwave in the kitchen started beeping, the smoke detectors chirped in sequence, and even the digital display on the coffee maker began flashing symbols that definitely weren't part of its original programming. "Everyone stay calm," Dr. Hendricks said, though she didn't sound entirely calm herself. "There's probably a rational explanation." The rational explanation appeared outside their front window a moment later, in the form of a craft that made their dinner guests' expressions shift from confusion to professional interest to something approaching awe. It was roughly triangular, about the size of a city bus, and it hovered 3 feet above their front lawn with no visible means of propulsion. The surface appeared to be made of the same shifting metallic material that had wrapped Zara and Kira, and it was covered in symbols that pulsed with soft light. "Well," Rodriguez said quietly, "I think we can rule out neighbors doing construction work."
The craft settled onto the lawn with surprising gentleness, and a section of its hull simply dissolved away to reveal an opening.
3 figures emerged, and even from a distance it was clear they were of the same species as Zara and Kira. They moved with the same flowing grace, and their skin had the same luminescent quality.
"Marcus," Sarah said very quietly, "I think you need to tell us what's really going on."
Before Marcus could answer, the sound of rapid footsteps came from upstairs, and Kira appeared at the top of the staircase. She said something urgent in her musical language, and Zara's voice responded from the guest room. "Those are voices," Morton observed. "Human voices, speaking something I don't recognize." "Not human," Marcus said, making a decision that he hoped wouldn't end his marriage or get them all arrested. "Very definitely not human."
"Doctor,"
Hendricks turned to stare at him. "Explain. Now." "I thought I was buying meat," Marcus said, the words coming out in a rush. "For dinner. From this weird vendor at the underground market. It was supposed to be some kind of exotic imported protein, but when we unwrapped it, it was them. 2 people, aliens. I accidentally bought 2 aliens." The silence that followed was broken only by the continued electronic chaos throughout the house and the soft humming from the craft outside. "You bought aliens," Rodriguez said slowly. "For dinner. I didn't know they were aliens. I thought they were meat." "Marcus," Sarah said, "when you said you were getting something special for tonight, this wasn't what I had in mind." Kira appeared in the dining room doorway with Zara close behind. Both beings assessed the situation quickly, their gaze moving from Marcus and Sarah to the 3 dinner guests, then to the windows where the alien craft was clearly visible. Zara said something to Kira, who nodded and stepped forward. When she spoke, it was in carefully pronounced English. "I am Kira of House Valanthe, 2nd Circle of the Velthara Empire. This is my sister Zara, 3rd Circle of the same house." She paused, clearly working to translate concepts that didn't have direct English equivalents. "We apologize for the disturbance. We were taken against our will and sold in your markets like livestock. Marcus Human purchased us without knowledge of what we were. We have summoned rescue." Dr. Hendricks sat down heavily. "Aliens, actual aliens, in my employee's house. And they speak English," Morton added. "Remarkably well, considering." "We learn quickly," Zara said, her accent turning the words musical. "Your languages are simple, efficient. We have been studying your communication networks." "That explains the phone interference," Rodriguez muttered. "You've been hacking our systems." "Not hacking," Kira corrected. "Integrating. Your technology is primitive but adaptable. We needed to contact our people and map the extent of the trafficking network." "Trafficking network?" "Dr. Holwerk." Hendricks leaned forward. "There are more of you?" "Many more," Zara confirmed. "Scattered across your world, sold to collectors, researchers, those who believe they are purchasing exotic creatures. The criminals who organize this trade have been operating for several of your years." The front door chimed, which was impossible because their doorbell had broken months ago. When Marcus peered through the window, he saw one of the figures from the ship standing calmly on their porch, hands clasped behind their back, in a posture that somehow conveyed both patience and authority. "I think that's for us," Marcus said. "Should we—" Sarah began. "Answer it," Zara said. "It is Captain Thane. He is what you would call a diplomat." Marcus opened the door to find himself face to face with an alien being who somehow managed to look both intimidating and reassuring at the same time. Captain Thane was taller than Zara or Kira, with skin that shifted between silver and deep blue, depending on the angle of the light. His features were sharp and angular, and his eyes held an intelligence that made Marcus feel like he was being evaluated by standards he couldn't begin to understand. "Greetings," Thane said in accented but precise English.
"I am Captain Thane of the Velthara Diplomatic Corps."
"I believe you have something that belongs to my people. They're not property," Marcus said quickly. "I mean, I know I technically bought them, but I didn't know what they were, and—" Dane raised a hand, and Marcus fell silent. "You misunderstand. I speak not of ownership but of citizenship. Kira and Zara are citizens of the Velthara Empire. taken illegally and sold through criminal networks. Their rescue has been our primary concern. He stepped into the house, moving with the same fluid grace as the sisters. When he saw the dinner guests, he paused and tilted his head. I was not informed there would be witnesses. They're friends, Sarah said quickly. Colleagues. They weren't. Dr. Patricia Hendricks. Dr. Hendricks interrupted, standing and extending her hand in a gesture that was both professional and slightly desperate. Director of Aerospace Development for Morrison Industries. I have to say, Captain Thaney, this is quite an honor. Thaney studied the offered hand for a moment, then grasped it gently. You are a leader among your people. In a small way, yes. Then, perhaps this encounter is fortuitous. Thane released her hand and addressed the room. We have a situation that affects both our peoples. The trafficking network has grown bold. They now target not just isolated individuals, but families, communities. They are expanding their operations. Morton stepped forward. Military background here, Captain. James Morton, formerly Air Force, now private aerospace consulting. Are you saying this is an ongoing threat? Indeed. And it grows worse. The criminals have begun selling their captives not just as curiosities, but to those who seek to study our physiology, our technology. Some of these purchases have scientific ambitions that endanger both our people and yours. Rodriguez had been silent, but now she spoke up.
Elena Rodriguez, Stellar Dynamics Corporation.
Captain Thane, what kind of scientific ambitions? Thane's expression grew grim. Weapons development, attempts to reverse engineer our biology for military applications, the creation of hybrid entities that belong to neither species. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. That's, Dr. Hendricks began. Monstrous, Morton finished. Even by military standards, that's completely unacceptable. Indeed. Which brings us to the purpose of this encounter. Thane turned to Marcus. You have inadvertently become involved in something much larger than a simple misunderstanding. The vendor who sold you Kira and Zara is part of a network that spans multiple star systems. By purchasing them, you have created a connection between their operations and your household. What kind of connection? Sarah asked. They will come looking for their missing merchandise, Zara explained. When they find that we are no longer here, they will assume you are either competitors or threats. Great, Marcus muttered. So we're targets now. Not necessarily, Thane said. This is where the fortuitous nature of your guests becomes relevant. Dr. Hendricks, Mr. Bard, Morton, Ms. Rodriguez, you represent significant portions of your planet's aerospace and defense industries, yes?
Collectively, yes, Doctor.
Hendricks confirmed. Why? Because this situation presents an opportunity. The Valthara Empire has been observing your world for some time, debating whether to make formal contact. The trafficking crisis has accelerated that timeline. Thane moved to the window, gazing out at his ship. We need allies in this fight. The criminal networks operate across multiple worlds, using ships and technology that your current defensive capabilities cannot counter. But your species has shown remarkable adaptability and innovation. You're talking about an alliance, Rodriguez said. Military cooperation, among other things. Technology sharing, joint operations, formal diplomatic relations. Morton laughed, but it wasn't entirely amused. Captain, we can barely manage relations among our own species. The idea of interplanetary diplomacy, your species is younger than ours, Thane acknowledged. That you have advantages we lack. You adapt quickly to new situations. You find creative solutions to impossible problems. He looked directly at Marcus. You take something that should be a catastrophe and somehow turn it into an opportunity. I bought them by accident, Marcus protested. Yes, and in doing so, you provided them with shelter when they needed it, protected them from recapture, and created the circumstances for this first formal contact between our peoples. An accident, perhaps, but a fortuitous one. Dr. Hendricks was clearly thinking fast. Captain Thane, what exactly are you proposing? A partnership. Your world faces a threat from these trafficking networks, whether you realize it or not. They will eventually target humans as well, once they have established sufficient infrastructure. We can provide technology and intelligence to help you counter this threat. In return, we ask for cooperation in dismantling the networks and assistance in developing new approaches to interspecies law enforcement.
And if we refuse? Morton asked.
Then we will handle the situation ourselves, but the criminal networks will likely establish permanent operations on your world. They prefer planets with developing spacefaring capabilities and minimal interstellar oversight. Thane's expression was diplomatic but firm. Your world matches that profile precisely. Kira and Zara had been listening to the exchange with growing excitement. Kira spoke up. Captain Thane, these humans have been kind to us. Marcus Human could have reported us to his authorities or tried to profit from our situation. Instead, he provided shelter and protection. And Zara Human has ensured we felt welcome and safe, Zara added. Their friends show wisdom and strength, Kira continued, gesturing toward the dinner guests. If humanity is to be judged by these examples, they would make excellent allies. Dr. Hendricks exchanged glances with Morton and Rodriguez. Some kind of silent communication passed between them, the result of years of working together in high-stakes situations. Captain Thane. Doctor, Hendricks said finally, I can't speak for all of humanity, but I can speak for our organizations, and I can put you in touch with people who can speak for governments. If what you're saying is true, if there really is an interplanetary trafficking network operating here, then we need to know about it. More than that, Rodriguez added, we need to do something about it. Morton nodded agreement. The military applications alone, if these criminals are trying to weaponize alien biology, that's a threat to global security. So we're really doing this, Sarah said. We're really making contact with aliens. At our dinner party. First contact by a pizza delivery, Marcus said. I bet that's not how anyone imagined it would happen. Captain Thane's expression shifted to something that might have been amusement. Your species has a remarkable capacity for finding humor in unprecedented situations. This bodes well for our future cooperation. Outside, the humming from the ship had shifted to a different frequency, and the streetlights had returned to normal illumination. Other ships were approaching from different directions, their own lights visible against the night sky. The rest of the diplomatic mission, Thane explained. We have much to discuss and time is limited. The trafficking networks will have detected our rescue operation. They will be taking countermeasures. Countermeasures? Marcus asked. They will attempt to eliminate evidence of their operations. This includes their captives, their buyers, and anyone who might testify against them. The implication hung heavy in the room. They're coming for us, Sarah said. Eventually, yes, but not immediately. They will need time to organize and assess the threat, which gives us a window of opportunity. Dr. Grieve, Hendricks stood, her expression shifting to the focused determination that had made her a successful executive. Then we'd better make good use of that window. Captain Thane, I assume you'll need to speak with higher authorities than we can provide access to. Indeed. But first, we must secure this location and ensure the safety of all participants. The next few hours will determine whether this first contact becomes the foundation for a lasting alliance, or the beginning of a much larger conflict. Marcus looked around his dining room, where the remnants of pizza boxes sat next to wine glasses, while alien diplomats planned interspecies cooperation and defense against galactic crime syndicates. Sarah, he said, I don't think this is what your mom meant when she said marriage would be an adventure. No, Sarah agreed. But I have to admit, it's definitely not boring. The next 6 hours transformed Marcus and Sarah's suburban home into the unofficial headquarters of humanity's first interplanetary diplomatic mission. By midnight, their living room housed a communication array that Captain Thane's team had assembled using a combination of Valthara technology and components salvaged from every electronic device in the neighborhood. I still can't believe you convinced the Hendersons to donate their smart TV, Sarah said, watching alien engineers integrate the television's processors into a device that was apparently capable of real-time communication with ships scattered throughout the solar system. They didn't really have a choice once their Wi-Fi started broadcasting what looked like alien shopping lists, Marcus replied. He was sitting at what used to be their kitchen table, now covered in holographic displays showing ship movements, communication intercepts, and what Kira had explained was a real-time map of trafficking network activities. Hendricks had proven remarkably adaptable to the situation. She'd spent the first hour on encrypted phones, waking up contacts in government and defense industries with carefully worded explanations that amounted to, we need people here now, and no, I can't explain over the phone. The second hour had involved a crash course in Valthara technology from Zara, who seemed to take genuine pleasure in explaining concepts that challenged human understanding of physics. The temporal displacement field isn't actually faster than light travel, Zara was saying to Rodriguez, who was frantically taking notes. It's more like folding space so that two distant points become adjacent. Think of it as stepping between rooms instead of walking down a long hallway. But the energy requirements, Rodriguez protested. The mass energy equation alone should make that impossible. Only if you assume energy and mass as separate things, Zara replied with what Marcus was learning to recognize as her teaching voice. Your Einstein was very close to the truth. but he was working with incomplete information about the nature of dimensional barriers. Morton had taken a more practical approach to the situation. He had appointed himself as coordinator between the alien diplomatic team and the steady stream of government officials, military officers, and scientists who had been arriving since 2 a.m. His military background served him well in managing what was becoming a complex logistics operation. SecDef wants to know if we need to evacuate the surrounding area, he reported, hanging up his secure phone. And the Joint Chiefs are asking about defensive capabilities in case the trafficking network decides to make a direct assault. Captain Thane looked up from the communication array he'd been monitoring. The surrounding area should be safe for now. The criminals prefer subtlety to direct confrontation. However, they have been mobilizing resources. We're tracking at least 12 vessels moving toward this system. 12 ships? Dr. Hendricks asked. How large are we talking? Cargo class mostly. Designed to transport large numbers of captives rather than engage in direct combat. But they will be armed, and they will have support vessels. Marcus felt his stomach clench. Support vessels meaning what, exactly? Warships. Thane said simply. The trafficking networks maintain their own fleets for protection against rivals and law enforcement. Some of these vessels match the capabilities of Vehara military ships. The front door opened, and a new group of officials entered, led by a woman in an army uniform who carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to handling impossible situations. Marcus recognized the rank insignia of a general, though he couldn't make out the details from across the room. General Patricia Morrison, the woman announced, surveying the transformed living room with professional interest. Joint Chiefs sent me to coordinate military response. I understand we have a first contact situation with potential hostile complications. That's an accurate summary, Captain Thane replied, rising to greet her. I am Captain Thane of the Velthara Diplomatic Corps. General Morrison studied him for a moment, then nodded. Captain, I have to say, this isn't how we expected first contact to happen. Nor did we. Circumstances have accelerated our timeline considerably. So I understand. My staff has been briefed on the trafficking network threat. We're prepared to offer full cooperation, but I need to understand exactly what we're facing. Kira stepped forward, activating one of the holographic displays. The image that appeared showed their solar system, but with additions that hadn't been there in any astronomy textbook Marcus had ever seen. Dotted lines traced ship movements, and clusters of symbols marked what were apparently permanent installations. The trafficking networks have established 3 major operational bases in your outer system, Kira explained. One in the asteroid belt using a mining platform your people abandoned several years ago. 2 others are mobile, using ships disguised as standard cargo freighters. They've been here for years, Zara added. Initially, they focused on abducting individuals from isolated areas of your world, missing persons cases that your authorities attributed to conventional crimes. But the market for exotic species has grown more sophisticated. What kind of market? General Morrison asked. Collectors initially, wealthy individuals who enjoy owning unique specimens. But increasingly, the buyers include research organizations, military contractors, groups seeking to develop new biological weapons. Dr. Hendricks leaned forward. Biological weapons based on alien physiology? Among other things, our species has certain capabilities that yours lacks: enhanced healing, longer lifespans, resistance to diseases, telepathic communication. Some of your people believe these traits can be extracted and weaponized. That's, General Morrison paused, clearly working through implications. That's a war crime waiting to happen. Even if it were scientifically possible. It is scientifically possible, Thane said quietly, and the techniques involved would likely require extensive experimentation on living subjects. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed that information. How many people are we talking about? Morton asked. Total captives. From our people? Approximately 300 individuals currently held on your world, with more arriving regularly. But the network has recently begun targeting humans as well. What? Sarah spoke up from where she'd been quietly monitoring news feeds. They're taking humans too? The market for exotic species includes Earth species now. Humans are considered NPA, interesting by certain collector communities. Your species' adaptability and technological innovation make you valuable research subjects. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. How many humans? Unknown. The disappearances are being disguised as conventional kidnappings or human trafficking. Your law enforcement agencies don't realize they're dealing with off-world criminal organizations. General Morrison was already reaching for her phone. I need to coordinate with FBI and Interpol immediately. If we have an unknown number of American citizens being taken by alien kidnappers, General, Captain Thani interrupted gently, there's more. The trafficking networks have detected our rescue operation. They're accelerating their timeline. What does that mean exactly? They're preparing to eliminate evidence. All of it. Captives, facilities, anyone who might testify against them. They'll abandon this system entirely and establish operations elsewhere, unless we stop them, Rodriguez said. Unless we stop them, Thane agreed. But doing so will require coordinated action between our forces and yours. The scale of the operation exceeds what either of our peoples could handle alone. General Morrison set down her phone and looked around the room. All right, cards on the table. What exactly are you proposing? Joint military action? Thane replied. Your forces handle ground-based operations, raiding facilities, securing evidence, protecting captives. Our forces handle space-based interdiction, preventing ships from escaping, cutting off supply lines, capturing leadership, and after that? Formal diplomatic relations, technology sharing agreements, coordinated law enforcement protocols to prevent this from happening again. Doctor, Hendricks spoke up. Captain, I have to ask, what's in this for your people? Why not just handle this yourselves and leave Earth out of it? Thane's expression grew thoughtful. Because this isn't just about the current crisis. The trafficking networks represent a broader problem. Criminals who exploit worlds that lack interstellar law enforcement. Your world is developing spacefaring capabilities rapidly. Soon, you'll encounter these problems whether we're involved or not. He gestured to the holographic display, which shifted to show a broader view of nearby star systems. These networks operate throughout this region. They target any world that has valuable resources but limited defensive capabilities. Earth fits that profile perfectly. So our choice is to deal with this now as part of an alliance or deal with it later on our own, General Morrison summarized. Essentially, yes. Though I should add that your species has already impressed us considerably. How so? Marcus and Sarah inadvertently disrupted a major trafficking operation simply by being in the wrong place at the wrong time and making the best of the situation. Dr. Hendricks, Mr. Ball, Morton, and Ms. Rodriguez immediately understood the implications and began organizing appropriate responses. Your military and government officials have adapted to an unprecedented situation with remarkable speed. Marcus laughed, but it came out slightly hysterical. We're being judged as a species based on how we handled accidentally buying aliens for a dinner party. Among other factors, yes, but it's a surprisingly comprehensive test. Crisis management, ethical behavior under pressure, willingness to cooperate across cultural barriers, ability to organize effective responses to complex threats. And we passed? Sarah asked. So far. But the real test is coming. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding from the communication array. Kira and Zara moved quickly to the displays, their expressions growing grim as they interpreted the incoming data. What is it? General Morrison demanded. The trafficking fleet has arrived ahead of schedule, Kira reported. 12 ships, as predicted, but they're not heading for the outer system installations. Where are they heading? Zara looked up from her display, her face pale. Here, they're coming directly for Earth. For this location. How long do we have? Morton asked, already reaching for his radio. 6 hours, maybe less. And they're not coming to negotiate. Captain Thane was moving toward the door, speaking rapidly into a communication device that hadn't been there moments before. Other members of his team were emerging from various rooms where they'd been working, all of them moving with the focused urgency of people preparing for combat. General Morrison, Thane called. I need to coordinate with your orbital defense systems immediately. These ships have capabilities your current satellites won't be able to counter. We don't really have orbital defense systems, General Morrison admitted. A few military satellites, but nothing designed for actual combat. Then we'll have to improvise. The Veilfara fleet can provide cover, but we'll need ground-based support to protect the civilian populations. Marcus looked around his living room, where the most important diplomatic and military meeting in human history was being planned around his mother-in-law's antique coffee table, while alien crime lords approached Earth with the intention of wiping out everyone who could testify against their operations. Sarah, he said, I think we're going to need a bigger pizza. But Sarah wasn't listening. She was staring at something on her laptop, her expression a mixture of amazement and terror. Marcus, she said quietly, you need to see this. The screen showed a live news feed from multiple sources around the globe. The headline read, Unidentified aircraft reported worldwide. But it was the footage that made Marcus's blood run cold. Ships were emerging from Earth's oceans. Not Veilthara ships, and not the approaching trafficking fleet. These were different, sleeker, darker, and they'd apparently been hiding in underwater installations that no human government knew existed. "Captain Thane," Marcus called. "We've got a bigger problem." Thane looked at the newsfeed and his face went completely white, or as white as blue-tinged skin could manage. "That's impossible," he breathed. "Those are Shadowhaven cartel ships. Military grade. They shouldn't have the resources for a full occupation force." "Occupation force?" General Morrison asked. "The trafficking network isn't just eliminating evidence," Thane realized. "They're claiming Earth as a permanent base of operations. They're not running away. They're digging in." Outside, the peaceful suburban night was interrupted by the sound of sonic booms as military aircraft scrambled to intercept unknown contacts. In the distance, something that might have been weapons fire lit up the horizon. The test of humanity's readiness for the galactic community had just become a baptism by fire, and Marcus was beginning to think that maybe, just maybe, accidentally buying 2 aliens at a meat market might turn out to be the best mistake he'd ever made. 3 months after what historians would later call the First Contact Crisis, Marcus Chen stood in the rebuilt auditorium of the United Nations building, watching his wife deliver a presentation that would have been pure science fiction just a few years earlier. The audience included representatives from 47 Earth nations and 12 different alien civilizations, all gathered to ratify the Terran Galactic Cooperation Accord. The joint operation successfully dismantled 17 trafficking installations across 4-star systems, Sarah reported, using a holographic display system that seamlessly blended human and Veilthara technology. "We recovered over 800 captives of various species, including 43 humans who had been missing for periods ranging from 6 months to 3 years. The battle for Earth had lasted only 18 hours, but it had changed everything. The Shadowhaven cartel had underestimated humanity's response time and the effectiveness of hastily formed human Veilthara joint forces. More importantly, they'd failed to account for the sheer bloody-minded stubbornness that humans displayed when defending their home." Marcus smiled as he remembered General Morrison's words during the height of the battle. "I don't care if they have faster-than-light drives and energy weapons. Nobody parks uninvited ships in my sky without filling out the proper paperwork." The human response had been creative. Unable to match alien technology directly, Earth's military forces had instead focused on asymmetric warfare, using everything from cyber attacks on communication systems to coordinated swarms of modified civilian drones. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens had proven remarkably adaptable to fighting alongside alien allies, with social media networks organizing supply runs for Veilthara forces, and civilian engineers offering real-time technical support for captured alien equipment. "The most significant outcome," Sarah continued, "has been the establishment of joint law enforcement protocols. The Interspecies Crime Prevention Initiative now operates across 23 member civilizations, with Earth serving as regional headquarters for this sector." Captain Thane, now holding the title of Ambassador Thane, leaned over to whisper, "Your species has a remarkable gift for turning military victories into administrative opportunities."
"We're good at bureaucracy," Marcus whispered back. "It's one of our secret weapons." The truth was more complex.
The battle had been won not just through military action, but through the kind of rapid innovation and adaptation that seemed to characterize humanity's approach to impossible problems. When conventional weapons proved insufficient, human engineers had worked around the clock with Veilthara technicians to develop hybrid technologies. When communication barriers threatened coordination, linguists and computer specialists had created real-time translation systems. When supply lines were disrupted, civilian networks had improvised alternatives. Most importantly, when the Shadowhaven cartel had tried to use their captives as hostages, human and alien rescue teams had worked together to develop tactics that prioritized saving lives over achieving military objectives. "The human approach to warfare is unusual," Kira had observed during one of the planning sessions. "Most species focus on defeating the enemy. Humans seem more concerned with protecting everyone else."
"Even the enemies?" Zara had asked.
"Especially the enemies. They capture instead of killing whenever possible. They try to rehabilitate criminal organizations instead of simply destroying them. It's inefficient, but it works." Marcus had finished. "We're not trying to win wars. We're trying to end them." Now, 3 months later, the results spoke for themselves. The trafficking networks hadn't been destroyed, they'd been transformed. Former criminals were working as consultants for the new interspecies law enforcement agencies, using their knowledge of illegal operations to help prevent future crimes. Rehabilitation programs were showing remarkable success rates, and several former trafficking bosses had become advocates for the rights of displaced persons across multiple star systems. It's probably the weirdest criminal justice revolution in galactic history, Rodriguez had commented during the last steering committee meeting. She was now heading up the technology integration program, working to adapt alien innovations for use on Earth while ensuring that human advances were shared appropriately with their new allies. Dr. Hendricks had found herself appointed as Earth's first Secretary of Interplanetary Affairs, a position that hadn't existed until someone realized they needed it desperately. Morton had become the military liaison for joint operations, coordinating between Earth forces and alien allies for ongoing security operations throughout the sector. The economic implications alone are staggering, Dr. Hendricks was saying from the podium. Lab-all, technology sharing agreements have already led to advances in energy production, medical treatment, and space transportation. Conservative estimates suggest these developments will improve Earth's technological capabilities by approximately 50 years over the next decade. But for Marcus, the most significant changes were personal. Zara and Kira had chosen to remain on Earth as cultural liaison officers, helping other rescued aliens adapt to human society while serving as bridges between the species. They'd moved into the guest house he and Sarah had built in their backyard and had become something like the sisters Sarah had never had. You realize, Kira had said just last week, that by accidentally purchasing us, you've essentially arranged the adoption of 2 alien siblings. Best impulse buy ever, Sarah had replied. The integration hadn't been seamless. There were cultural misunderstandings, technological incompatibilities, and the occasional diplomatic crisis when someone discovered that a common human gesture was deeply insulting to one of their new alien allies. But humanity had approached these problems with the same pragmatic creativity they'd shown during the crisis itself. The key finding, Sarah was concluding her presentation, is that successful interspecies cooperation requires not just technological compatibility, but cultural flexibility. Species that can adapt their approach based on circumstances and learn from their partners are significantly more likely to develop lasting alliances. The applause that followed included sounds from multiple species, creating a complex harmony that Marcus had learned to recognize as a sign of universal approval. Ambassador Thane took the podium next, his presence commanding immediate attention. 3 months ago, the Valthara Empire began a formal evaluation of humanity's readiness for galactic citizenship. Today, I am pleased to announce that this evaluation has concluded with a unanimous recommendation for full membership in the galactic community. The applause this time was definitively human, loud and enthusiastic. Marcus found himself clapping along, still slightly amazed that his accidental purchase at an underground market had led to humanity joining an interstellar civilization. However, Thane continued, raising his hand for silence, membership comes with responsibilities. Earth will serve as the sector headquarters for law enforcement activities, medical treatment for displaced persons, and technological integration support. These are significant commitments that will require ongoing cooperation between all Earth governments and the broader galactic community. A representative from the European Union stood to ask a question. Ambassador Thane, what specific obligations does this membership entail? Primarily, you will be expected to contribute to regional security and development. Earth's location makes it a natural hub for this sector, and your species' particular talents make you well suited for coordination and problem-solving roles. What particular talents? Asked the representative from Japan. Thane's expression shifted to something that Marcus had learned to recognize as amusement. Your ability to find creative solutions to impossible problems. Your tendency to turn crises into opportunities. Your inclination to rehabilitate enemies rather than simply defeat them. And your remarkable talent for building effective bureaucracies. We're joining the galactic community because we're good at paperwork? The EU representative asked. Among other things, but do not underestimate the importance of effective administration. Most interstellar conflicts arise from communication failures, resource allocation disputes, and administrative incompetencies.
The species that can manage complex logistics while maintaining ethical standards is extremely valuable.
Marcus felt a tap on his shoulder and turned to find a young reporter with a camera crew. Mr. Chen, I'm doing a follow-up story on the first contact incident. Could I ask you a few questions?
Sure, Marcus said, though he still felt odd about being interviewed as a historical figure.
How does it feel to know that your grocery shopping mistake led to humanity joining an interstellar civilization? Marcus glanced toward the podium, where Sarah was now discussing plans for the first joint human-alien colony ships. Then toward the back of the auditorium where Zara and Kira were helping translate for representatives from species whose languages hadn't been fully integrated into the universal translation system yet. Honestly, Marcus said, it feels like the most expensive dinner party in history actually turned out to be worth it. Any regrets about how things worked out? Marcus considered this. His house had been destroyed during the battle and rebuilt as a diplomatic residence. His quiet life as a structural engineer had been replaced by a career in interspecies architecture, designing buildings that could accommodate the needs of multiple alien species simultaneously. His marriage had survived first contact, interplanetary warfare, and the ongoing complications of having alien roommates, though they'd had to get a much larger refrigerator. No regrets, he said finally, though I do miss being able to go grocery shopping without security escorts. Any advice for other humans who might accidentally make contact with alien species? Be polite, keep an open mind, and always have pizza on speed dial. You never know when you're going to need to feed a bunch of unexpected dinner guests. Later that evening, after the formal ceremonies had concluded and the various delegates had departed for their respective hotels, space stations, and dimensional pocket universes, Marcus found himself in the backyard of his new house, sharing a beer with Ambassador Than, while Sarah, Zara, and Kira planned the following week's cultural exchange programs. Ambassador, Marcus said, can I ask you something? Of course. That first night when you came to our house, did you know how all of this was going to turn out? Thane was quiet for a moment, watching the stars overhead. There were more ships visible now than there had been 3 months ago, but they were friendly ships, part of the regular traffic to the new spaceport that had been built just outside the city. No, Thane admitted. I expected to retrieve 2 of our citizens and file a diplomatic protest about trafficking activities. I did not expect to discover that humanity was ready to become a major player in galactic affairs. What convinced you that we were ready? The pizza, Thane said solemnly. The pizza? When faced with an unprecedented crisis, most species either panic or attempt to apply existing protocols. You ordered food delivery and treated alien contact as a dinner party that had gotten slightly out of hand. That suggested a level of adaptability and perspective that we hadn't seen before. Marcus laughed. So we passed the test by not taking it seriously enough? You passed the test by taking it exactly as seriously as it deserved. Not more, not less. That kind of practical wisdom is rare among spacefaring species. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the conversation from inside the house where their wives, biological and adopted, were planning humanity's future among the stars. One more question, Marcus said. Yes? If I hadn't bought Zara and Kira that day, what would have happened? Thane's expression grew thoughtful. The trafficking network would have continued to operate. More people would have disappeared. Eventually, there would have been a crisis, but it would have happened when humanity was less prepared and the criminals were more entrenched. So my shopping mistake actually saved people?
Your shopping mistake, Thani corrected, created the conditions for people to save themselves.
Which is really what leadership is about. Marcus looked up at the stars, where the lights of various spacecraft traced gentle patterns across the night sky. Somewhere out there, former trafficking victims were building new lives in rehabilitation colonies. Human and alien law enforcement teams were working together to prevent future crimes. Engineers from dozens of species were collaborating on technologies that would benefit everyone. And it had all started because he tried to buy what he thought was exotic meat for a dinner party and ended up with 2 alien sisters instead. Sarah's going to want a bigger house, he said eventually. Probably, Thane agreed. I understand the cultural exchange program is expecting at least 12 new species representatives by next year. 12? We're going to need a bigger kitchen, too. I believe, Thane said with something that might have been a smile, that your species will adapt. You seem to have a talent for it. Inside the house, Sarah was laughing at something Zara had said, while Kira was apparently trying to explain human humor to someone on a video call with one of the colony ships. It was the sound of families adapting to impossible circumstances and somehow making it work. Marcus finished his beer and stood up. I should go help them plan whatever impossible thing they're organizing next. Indeed. Though I suspect, Thane said, rising as well, that you'll find a way to make the impossible seem perfectly reasonable. Humans seem to have a talent for that as well. As they headed back toward the house, Marcus reflected that accidentally buying aliens for dinner might have been the most expensive grocery shopping mistake in history, but it had also been the most profitable, not in monetary terms, but in the ways that really mattered. He'd gained a sister-in-law who could reprogram any electronic device and another who could explain the mysteries of faster-than-light travel. His wife had become one of the most important diplomats in human history. His house had become a center for interplanetary cooperation, and humanity had found its place among the stars, not through conquest or discovery, but through the simple act of being decent to strangers when it would have been easier not to be. Not bad for $300 and a dinner party that had served pizza instead of whatever exotic meat he'd thought he was buying, though he still made Sarah handle the grocery shopping now. Some mistakes were too dangerous to repeat, no matter how well they turned out in the end.